Good evening, Force fans. Shane here. How are we all? Hope you've all had a lovely day. Just watched the eclipse here in the UK. Kind of disappointing, in all fairness. It was quite underwhelming. um, anyway, that aside, the reason for this video today is just want to basically just give you a little bit of a catch up really, and see how everything is. So last couple of days been quite busy for me with the kids, summer holidays, as I've mentioned in the previous video. But I caught up with a couple of live streams, a couple of more TVC centric ones, in all fairness. But I just gotta say, can we have an end now to this discussion about the changing of TVC packaging? I think the conversation it's overdone already, and the point is Hasbro haven't even said they were going to be doing this whatsoever anyway. It was a hypothetical question posed by Mr. Stevie, but everyone's just gripped it, and they've gone from 10 to the dozen with their opinions and thoughts on it. Can I give you mine categorically? And I don't care if you agree or disagree or whatever. Right, from my point of view, the TVC packaging is quintessential Star Wars for that particular scale, the 3.75 scale, okay? It was born out of the original Kenner packaging from 78 up to 80, I think, maybe 81. Then obviously it delved into the Kenner Power of the Force, the last 17 line. I think, well documented anyway. I'm not gonna dig up the history, but my point of view is that packaging is so special to the generation that grew up specifically with the original trilogy films: A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. Okay, I think, and this is my own opinion, that any figure or release from those three properties should maintain the vintage collection regardless. Okay, now I'm prefacing this now with, I do get that there's a huge generation now of collectors who grew up with, the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, the Clone Wars, the animated stuff. Okay, I get that, and for me personally, I don't think those figures should specifically be on the vintage collection cards. Okay, I look back to when I used to collect Power of the Force. I'm talking about the 1995, the buff figures. I collected those. Then I went on to Power of the Jedi. Then I went on to the Saga collection, the 30th anniversary collection, and then I dabbled a little bit in TVC. Now, I did give up on TVC specifically. It was more to do with, I just at the time I just liked the 6-inch figures better. I felt they had a lot more detail, and I was proven wrong on quite a few occasions, to be fair. There are 3.75 figures which are much better than some Black Series bits. If you can hear any kind of screams or anything in the background, it's just my son. He's playing up in the bedroom on Fortnite. He's got the windows open because it's quite hot. Okay, so anyway, going back to my thoughts, I love the TVC card back. The 1.0, the 2.0, I love it, and I feel that it should only be specifically for original trilogy characters. Okay, now I get it. That might be a popular opinion. It might be an unpopular opinion, but it's my opinion. Okay, I'm not here to argue for it, against it, whatever, you know. But I look back to the Phantom Menace line when that came out in 1999, you know, with the Darth Maul card back. Absolutely fantastic. Probably one of my favorite card backs for a Star Wars property, for a toy line. It was vivid, it was vibrant, you know, the colors were fantastic. So I would say, if they were to change it, and they were going to release a couple of Phantom Menace characters again now, then I would say put them on that 1999 card. Do that. And do that for any Phantom Menace figure. Now, I know Attack of the Clones in 2002, it had more of a blue colour scheme. I think, off the top of my head, the bubble was quite big on the cards as well. But again, it was a vibrant, it was eye-catching, you know. And I do strongly believe that, you know, there is a need to get in more collectors, right? But I'm gonna preface this. Sorry, don't even know that's a word. Sorry, I'm gonna preface this with a simple observation, right? I'm a father of two. Okay, I've got a boy and I've got a girl, 12 and 14. My son, right? He's watched Star Wars. He's watched a few things, right? But he was born in 2014, okay? 2014. So he's basically born just as the Disney era started off. Now, I've bought him over the years, I've bought him a couple of Star Wars things here and there, okay? I've sat with him, I've watched the films with him. It simply doesn't resonate with him as much as it did with me growing up, okay? Now, that could be down to a lot of things, you know, in these modern days, okay? He's absolutely a digital generation kid, okay? He loves his Fortnite, he loves his FIFA, he loves his PS5, his Xbox. He's very much video game orientated, okay? When he was small, he played with figures, okay? But he would play with multiple different lines. He would play with you know, wrestling figures, or the Spin Masters, Batman characters, you know, the little small ones. But with Star Wars, it didn't sink in with him. It didn't sink in with him, you know. I could talk to him at length about, you know, mythology, you know, the hero's journey, in considering Luke. You know, I could talk to him about my favorite bits, right? And don't get me wrong, he's watched all 9 saga films, okay? But did he watch them fully? Did he sit there and watch them without being, you know, was he fully engaged with what was happening on the screen? No. You know, he would like the action bits, you know, the Battle of Hoth, the skiff battle in Return of the Jedi, the speeder bike chase. But he would also know that that those movies now are quite dated when you line them up against what, you know, what the Marvel films have done. And this is another thing as well. He played a lot with Marvel. He grew up with Marvel, with the Marvel universe, the Avengers, you know, Hulk, he loves Spider-Man, right? You know, so yeah, he's got a couple of Marvel Legends and stuff, you know, but he hasn't quite gravitated to Star Wars. And I think this, is part of the battle. I mean, is it a property that a younger generation are going to want to buy? Because at the moment, it's it's a lot of it's a lot of older generation that are buying the figures. We're buying the Black Series, we're buying TVC. Okay, I would genuinely be hard. I've got a few friends with kids, right, various ages, right. When I've gone to their homes, or we've had play dates, barbecues, that kind of thing. I've not seen any of those children ever play with a Star Wars figure. All right, and I think it's a reality that we have to accept. I don't think Hasbro are going to click into that market for kids born from 2010 onwards. Okay, it's all very well me having a substantial collection of Star Wars stuff, right? It doesn't mean jot to my kid. I say to my boy, when touch wood, but when I pass, at some point, that's going to be left to him, and not to go all nerdy, not to go all, inventory. I hear that coming up a lot lately whenever someone collects things or leaves things carded. Inventory. Shut up, you snob. At the end of the day, people can do what they like with their toys. They can put them on their walls, they can line them up in an order they want, they can rip the boxes open, they can play with them. That is their choice, and we should respect that. We shouldn't slag them off for it. Okay, so sorry, minor rant over, but my point is, my collection is my nest egg for the future. They're my children's future. Whether it'll be worth anything, I don't know, but there's an option there to sell it on if the time comes, or when the time comes. Okay, but my point is, I can't envisage a year now. I can't envisage a time where Star Wars is gonna be in the zeitgeist for kids, the kids from 5, 6. It's a heritage property, regardless of any new media that comes out of it. It all goes back to the 70s. I don't care what you say, right? I don't care what order you make kids watch things in, right? And yet you will get those kids that like the mythology, they like the characters, they like the storylines. Okay, but I can't honestly tell you the last time that me personally, and feel free to let me know if I'm completely off the wall here, but I can't remember a time I've seen a kid play with a Star Wars figure. You know what I mean? Now I've got a friend of mine who's got a little boy, who has got a couple of action verse things, but they're throwaway. That kid doesn't know what the characters are, doesn't care, they just look cool. But I'm going off on a wild one here, sorry, but my point is, I think it's definitely a certain demographic, a certain age of people now that are keeping the line alive. And you can want a new generation to come in. I hear a lot lately as well of this passing the torch on. It's like, passing the torch on to what? You've got to get a foundation. You've got to get a generation of children who fall in love with Star Wars. Okay, they've tried it with The Mandalorian and Grogu, right? Jon Favreau said this movie is basically a kids movie, right? That movie bombed. That movie sucked. I'm sorry. It had minor parts which were great, right? I took my kids to watch it. I watched it. We were pretty much bored for a good 45 minutes of that movie. Bored. It just didn't grab them, right? But I took them to see Spider-Man Brand New Day. Edge of their seat. Smiling, just gripped by the storyline. And that was the fourth of the of that new generation Spider-Man. I can't remember the guy's name who plays him. It'll come to me. But you've had your Far From Home, No Way Home, Homecoming, that trilogy. And this was part four. But it gripped them, it gripped them. They loved it. Mandalorian and Grogu just did not have that same effect for them whatsoever at all. I know there are people who sing the praises of that film, and that's fine. I thought the movie was poor, but I'll leave that by. But the point is, just going back, it is older guys, older people, not older guys, older generations, men, women, who grew up on Star Wars, regard if that was in the 70s, the 90s, the 2000s, right? It's that period that are keeping the line going, keeping us alive, keeping it going, basically. So why would Hasbro risk changing something, right? There's already a lot of data out there which proves that TVC in particular isn't doing as well as it used to. That could be as a result of a more focus on the 6-inch line, the Black Series. But I don't see that many TVC figures at clearance when I go places, but I see a lot of Black Series. Okay, so on paper, the TVC line, I don't know the facts and figures. I'm not a businessman. I don't have the data in front of me. There are other channels who are religious about this kind of thing, but just from an outsider perspective, I think the TVC line seems to be doing better than the Black Series in a way. Could be wrong. Let me know if I am. But the point is, I don't foresee Hasbro changing the vintage collection packaging on a whim in an attempt to draw in a new generation. I just cannot see it happening. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there right now. Let me know in the comments if you agree with what I've said. If you don't agree, let me know why. Let's open up a bit of a dialogue and let's have a chat. And we can go from there. But anyway, that's just my thoughts on everything. But I hope you all have a lovely evening, and I'll catch you soon. Take care. Bye bye.